Welcome back. You're watching HFO TV.
Welcome back to HFO TV. I'm Greg Frick, partner here at HFO Investment Real Estate. Today speaking with us, we have Christian Kaler, economist with the Oregon Employment Division. Thanks again for coming back. I think we're going to talk a little bit today about the Portland economy and kind of get an update of where we've been, where we're going, and kind of get a feel. It's been kind of a wild ride this last year. So again, thanks for coming back.
Sure.
So any big kind of surprises in you looking at the year-end numbers in terms of 2016, in terms of the Oregon economy and Portland specific?
2016 was a great year for Portland. 2015 was as well, and it was great. We just kept that momentum going, which is fantastic. So coming into 2017, we're looking at just excellent momentum across the board on just about every economic indicator.
Okay, and are we seeing that up and down the West Coast? I mean, kind of the numbers I've seen, Oregon, Washington, California have kind of experienced this kind of robust recovery.
Yeah, from Seattle down to LA, the Bay Area, Portland area, they were all doing quite well. Even some of the more rural areas, some of the more rural markets in Oregon, like Southern Oregon, are finally, especially in 2016, started to come back robustly. They had trouble recovering from the recession for a long time. So even in 2012, 13, even in 2015, there was some slowness. But now we're seeing every region in the state of Oregon really growing at this point for 2016.
And on the employment side, are we seeing any regions that are sectors in the employment side that are outperforming kind of even what your expectations were coming into 16 and looking where we are in 17?
Construction is doing very well. It's up about 10% for employment over the last 12 months. It's rare to see any major industry sector grow at a double-digit rate.
Wow.
But keep in mind, construction employment is still below where it was in 2006, 2007. So they dug a really big hole in the construction industry in that recession. I mean, that was a construction industry based recession. Yes. And really looking at the data, the construction industry still isn't where it was 10 years ago.
So we're still number-wise, we've had good growth, but number-wise we're still below where we were 10 years. Interesting.
The momentum is great, but it's surprisingly, and people are surprised when they hear this, we still have some catching up to do on the construction side in the Portland area.
Right. Well, we see that in our industry in terms of just the labor shortage of construction, what that's done to the cost. Yeah. The cost of construction it's the labor that's really been driving up this last year, and it's interesting.
Yeah, nothing's going to grow at 10% forever; it just can't. And so there's going to be some real, I think, workforce shortages in the construction industry if you're not seeing them already.
No, we've already seen them. Yeah, that's been. I even heard which is interesting. All the construction we hear about up north in Seattle, our workforce shortage seems more dramatic here than even up north to our neighbor.
Well, Seattle is nationally maybe the hottest construction market in the U.S. right now. I mean, that gets discussed a lot, even compared to San Francisco, L.A.
So I wonder if some of those construction jobs that would be naturally coming back to Oregon are just kind of averting, and they're going further up I-5. You're going to move back. So
yeah, I mean, if you're getting paid significantly more, maybe you pack up the pickup truck and you drive a few hours north and make a few extra dollars on that roofing job.
There you go. And what about on wage growth? I mean, what are you seeing in terms of? I know we've had employment growth. I'm sure wage growth is kind of coupling behind that.
Yeah, so wage growth sort of lagged for many years, but 2016 was the first year, both nationally and particularly locally, we've seen very strong wage growth. We're still working with the preliminary data for 2016, but we're showing some of the strongest wage growth we've seen in a generation in the Portland area.
And is it in one segment of, is it the upper end, middle, lower, in terms of where the growth is coming from?
Yeah, the Portland is very good at creating high wage jobs. It's also very good at creating low wage jobs, but we're very poor at creating those sort of middle class jobs, particularly manufacturing, government, and construction really over the longer term. We're still behind the curve on that. But we're seeing a lot of growth in professional and technical services. So a lot of jobs that require college graduates. Right. People who have college degrees. So, and that's really across the board. It's computer programmers. The average computer programmer in Portland makes $105,000 a year. Attorneys, engineers, architects. We're just seeing a huge demand and growth across the board in professions that require college graduates. And we're seeing just incredible growth in the number of college graduates moving to the Portland area. 4 or 5 times faster growth among college graduates than the rest of the population growth in the city of Portland.
So what are the effects when you're getting that segment moving, but you're not getting the growth in that middle? From an economist standpoint, what are you looking at, or what are the kind of the red flags in terms of what's going on there?
Well, the good news is that household incomes in Portland have really been shooting up. In 2010, the city of Portland, if you take the 50 largest cities in America, and you ranked them in terms of household income.
Right.
The city of Portland in 2010 was the 17th wealthiest, so we were somewhat in the middle of the pack of the 50 largest cities in America. The latest data, which just came out last month from Census, showed that in 2015 we're up to 8th highest income. So we're doing very well. We're coming up fast, but that's really been driven again by this incredible number of college graduates taking these jobs that pay in these professional industries, and that's pulling up our wages very, very quickly. But we've seen almost no growth in the middle class in the same economic recovery. So households making, say, between $50,000 and $65,000 a year, we haven't seen any growth in that segment, particularly in the city of Portland, the urban core, but in the larger Portland metro area, Clackamas County, Washington County as well.
So it's all really, like you said, the higher end wage earners coming in.
And they're just pulling that average,
up.
Statistic up.
Right.
But, more from the real estate point of view, they can afford to spend a lot more in the real estate market on a piece of property than maybe somebody who's middle class or lower middle class.
Right. So you get this bifurcated market where you've got this upper end and then you have nothing in the middle and the lower income type end.
Yeah, and in fact, the city of Portland has seen a large decrease in the number of households making less than $35,000 a year. Only Seattle's again famous nationally, has the largest decrease in households where the average income is less than $35,000 a year. They're just not finding the city affordable at all. But Portland's number 2 behind Seattle for seeing the decrease in low-income households.
Right. So then the question is, what is it? What comes first? Is it the increase in wages, which is driving pricing up, and then that means the middle income is not staying here? Or is it not the job creation and the middle income's not here, and so therefore they're looking somewhere else?
Yeah, I think that they're feeding each other. We have a cycle here where the Portland area is incredibly good at creating jobs. Oregon's on track in 2016 as a state to be the 4th fastest job growth in the nation. And I think we were in the top 3. I think we were 3rd fastest for job growth in 2015. And again, I think we're going to be probably 4th here when we get the final data in a couple months for 2016 in the U.S. And the Portland area and the city of Portland are creating jobs at an incredible pace. So we're doing really well, and that feeds into, when you create that many jobs, you're going to get people moving here from all over the country. But additionally, as you get people moving here from all over the country, and we're seeing some of the strongest population growth numbers we've seen in 20 years, you're also creating an availability for the workforce that feeds into the business cycle. So they're feeding each other really nicely. But the negative effect can be that they're bidding up. If your household makes $150,000, $200,000 a year, and we've seen a 50% increase in households that make over $150,000 a year in the city of Portland in the last 5 years, which is a huge increase. Yes. It's a big deal. You can afford to outbid a lot of other people on rents or mortgages or land. So that's just really new for people in Portland to experience that.
Right. Or you're forced to bid it up because you've got 5 other people making the same offer, so it just kind of feeds up and it continues to push.
Yeah.
And then you've got that middle group that's there saying, wait a minute,
Yeah, and I think we're seeing increasingly some pressure out to some of the suburbs. So people driving a little bit further out in every direction, north, south, east, and west, are sort of driving a little further out because that's what they can afford on their $60,000 a year salary.
We're seeing that on the construction side, even in the multifamily market, where predominantly the new construction is all in the core, all central city. But now we're seeing in the suburbs where it's making sense because, like you said, not everybody can afford to live here. Not everybody wants to live right in the core, so they're looking at other options outside the area.
And I think that's good for the overall economy. Coming out of the recession, 2011, 2012, really all the big multifamily projects were in the city of Portland.
Right.
And in the last couple of years now, we are seeing them in Vancouver and Hillsborough, even the big project in Lake Oswego. But there's still a lot of room in the suburbs for bigger multifamily projects. I'd like to see that sort of take pressure off the city of Portland. I'd like to see the city of Portland stop being the place that we do all these multifamily projects. And I think from my conversations with policy folks, county commissioners and city councilors in Washington County and Clackamas County, I think they see a recognition that they need to build some more density and sort of accommodate that new market.
Which is tough. And in Portland, the density is a big issue here. Like I said, everybody doesn't want urban sprawl. They want density, or they don't want density in their neighborhood. They don't want urban sprawl, but they want affordability. And it's tough to get those 3 pillars working together and achieve the goal of affordable housing. And again, part of it, like you talked about, is you've got this upper wage coming in here that's going to drive up even what used to be affordable housing to continue to push. So it's going to be interesting how that all works out politically.
Yeah, I suspect that it'll continue to be the hottest political topic for the next year or two. I've had this job for 17 years, and during recessions, the politicians all sort of bang on the table with their fists and they say, we need to create some jobs. But the last couple of years, the only thing that politicians have been banging on the table about is housing issues. And it just got more intense in 2016. I suspect the debate will actually become more intense in 2017.
Well, that's what we are feeling the same pressure and thinking the same thing is going to happen. In terms of the housing, is there? What about Southern Oregon? It's kind of the other bend. Those markets come. I don't expect them to come back like Portland, but are we seeing the same kind of job growth and employment growth?
They're coming back, but they dug themselves a deeper hole in the recession than the Portland area did.
Okay.
So they have further to go. I would say the big market outside of the Portland area is Deschutes County. Deschutes County is probably the only place, and I'm including Eugene, Salem, Medford, Ashland here. I think Deschutes County, the Bend area, is really the only market outside of the Portland area that's showing really robust economic growth.
Okay, from a job growth standpoint.
Yeah, and they got hammered really hard by the recession, but they have come back better than any other place in the state of Oregon outside of the Portland area. But Eugene is still struggling. Salem is still struggling to get the jobs back. And if you look at the longer term, sort of last 5 or 10 years with the job growth and the population demographics, they aren't attracting that professional workforce. They really aren't getting it. Even Eugene, which has the University of Oregon, they're not there yet. And maybe that'll turn around in the next few years, but right now, the vast bulk of job creation, put it this way, in the last 10 years, 77% of all jobs created in the state of Oregon were created in 4 counties. the Tri-County area and the Portland area,
right.
Multnomah, Washington, Clackamas, and Deschutes County.
77%.
77%. There's 36 counties in Oregon.
Wow.
And it's really those 4. And you see very little growth even in the Willamette Valley over the last 10 years. And again, one of my concerns is that the cycle that Portland's enjoying isn't working as well in Albany, Corvallis, Eugene,
right.
and Salem, where a business that's thinking about expanding in Oregon wants to be where the professional educated workforce is. And they're having troubles finding that in Eugene, Salem, and even Corvallis. But they know they can get it in the Portland area because
so inevitably they're going to come up here and.
Yeah, we've added 40,000 college graduates to the workforce in the last 5 years in the Portland area. Eugene hasn't added anybody. Salem hasn't added anybody. Roseburg's actually losing its college educated workforce. So where is a business going to expand in Oregon?
Right. So do you see maybe the manufacturing business going to some of those other markets from an affordability standpoint, where Portland becomes the higher educated nucleus for the state, and you have other kind of jobs, or is it across the board?
Maybe, but you keep in mind with manufacturing, it's becoming so technical.
Right.
And not just high-tech manufacturing, food manufacturing, clothing manufacturing. They have this very expensive equipment. It's highly automated, and it needs people who have years of technical experience. And you have so few people who have those skills.
Right.
You're better off being able to get them in the Portland area. Or if you're in the Portland area, recruiting nationally and getting someone to relocate to Portland, then to another part of the state. Another thing about manufacturing, they had a really good run there, I'd say 2012 through about 2014, maybe 2015. The last year or two, though, they've really flattened out. We haven't seen any manufacturing growth in 2016 at all. And that goes across all manufacturing sectors. It's not just high tech. It's, again, food, metals, transportation equipment. We're not seeing any growth in manufacturing.
Just flat on for the last 2 years.
Yeah, not really decline either.
Right.
So it's not necessarily something to panic about yet, but they are the only industry that didn't grow in 2016.
Interesting.
Major industry in the economy. Yeah.
So with all these people coming to, with the higher educated, immigration coming to Portland, I mean, I get asked a lot, like you're driving around, people are saying, my gosh, look at all this construction.
Yeah.
Are we going to have an oversupply? And I keep trying to say, I mean, in a snippet of time, it does seem like a lot.
Yeah.
But if you look at the immigration numbers over, the last 5 years, we have, kind of what are your thoughts on where the balance is? Are we undersupplied, oversupply in terms of, metro construction?
Yeah, I think that it looks like oversupply, but once you look at the data, I would argue that we're still pretty seriously undersupplied. Because again, we're one of the hottest markets in America for job creation and in-migration. So
right.
People moving here from wherever else in the United States. And part of it is that there has been a role reversal. Historically, multifamily housing was 20 or 30% of the inventory in the Portland area. And it's about half of the new inventory over the last couple of years in the Portland area. And so that's more visible.
Yes.
I mean, when you drive down the street and you see a 8-story tower or taller being built, that's a remarkable thing to see. Whereas if you see a duplex being built, it might not be as visually dramatic. It takes a lot of duplexes to add up to one of the number of units in one of these
to an
suckers.
8-story tower.
So again, it's very visible. But single family is still way down from where it used to be in terms of what we're building now. Multifamily is way up, but once you balance those out, the total net inventory coming online is not historically that high. And especially when you consider how hot the economy is, and that we really didn't build almost anything 2009, 2010, 2011. Right. You would expect to see a lot of activity coming out of that, and we're seeing a certain amount. But we didn't build as much inventory in 2016 as we did in previous decades.
Right, which I think is, like you said, people look at it, it's very visual. A lot of it's concentrated within the city. I think, back in the 90s, even early 2000s, a lot of the big construction multifamily was in the suburbs.
Right.
So, you're driving around, you go to Beaver and you see huge, but here you've got tower after tower, and I think there's this kind of implied, like, oh man, there's going to be so many units. Like, it's not as many as you think.
Yeah, I have family and friends. They live in the suburbs, and then we'll come downtown and we'll go out to eat or something, and they'll walk around one of these neighborhoods in the Portland, like the Central East Side,
right,
particularly, and they'll just look at all of these projects that are going up simultaneously, and they'll think that just doesn't seem sustainable to them. But again, if you actually look at the data. It's not that much inventory, surprisingly. And again, from a historical longer-term point of view, we've created 170,000 jobs in the Portland region in the last 6 years. That's a tremendous amount of jobs. Plus those people's kids and their spouses, right. The families they're bringing with them. You need a tremendous amount of inventory to keep up with that amount of job growth. And frankly, I still don't think we're building as much to keep up with the population and job growth.
And so I know you deal a lot with a lot of policymakers. I mean, what is their thought on that? Is it we try to get more density, but then again, you come to the question that density is expensive. Is it, do you try to expand the urban growth boundary a little bit, or what? I mean, what are kind of the things that you see that maybe levers to kind of help ease some of the pressure, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, from a policy point of view, I think roughly you have these two options: increase density or right. increase the urban growth boundary. And I think both are legitimate strategies for increasing housing supply. The challenge is, but each one has a unique challenge.
Yes.
With the urban growth boundary, these counties are really struggling to figure out how to bond or levy for the infrastructure necessary. It's one thing to take Farmer Johnson's field, move it into the urban growth boundary, and say, okay, this is single family now.
There's no infrastructure.
There's no sewer, there's no water, there's no road, there's no school. And so then the city and the county go, well, we don't have the money to put in that infrastructure. So they're waiting to have a discussion with the developer. They're talking about bonding for it. But there's real fiscal conservatism around the country, but certainly in these suburban areas, that they don't particularly want to build that infrastructure. They want the developer to pay for it. And so it's really, that's a constraint. Until we figure out how we're going to pay for that infrastructure, the urban growth boundary thing has been working for us as well. Similarly with the density issue, I've really been impressed in the last 5 or 10 years how much the more suburban counties, Clark County, Clackamas County, Washington County, have really bought into the idea of improving density.
Yes.
Building more multifamily, being more comfortable with that. I think the conversation has really shifted when I talk to mayors and city councilors around the region, that they understand that having a walkable neighborhood is something that's very attractive. However, you have longer-term residents who've lived there a long time that have real concerns about the traffic and the sewer and the infrastructure. And again, you come back to some of the similar issues where some of these cities or neighborhoods where they want to build an apartment building, it's going to cost they're going to need infrastructure upgrades, putting intersections, sewer, water lines. And it's tough. Those cities get into negotiations with the developers,
Right.
and sometimes those negotiations break down. I think the city of Portland, one of the reasons it builds so much is because they know how to do that. Just through repetition and practice, they've negotiated with developers on infrastructure. Whereas a lot of these suburban communities, they're just not really sure what the rules of the game are with who pays for what when developers come to town. But they're learning. I've been really impressed with the conversations I'm hearing, and I think longer term, the more suburban counties you're gonna see a surprising amount of density. That big Lake Oswego project, I think, is the first of many you're gonna start seeing come online as these communities realize it's a big economic benefit.
Huge, yes. And it's a different kind of product. I think a lot of the suburban communities are not used to more of a higher density multifamily project. They're used to these, garden style, low density, which, 20 years ago was great, but that's not going to meet the demand that's there. And I think it's just an education process we are building a lot, but on top of that, we have a lot of people coming in.
I think these baby boomers in the suburbs, at first they're skeptical, but once they walk to the bakery and they walk to the grocery store and they walk back to their apartment, they just they get it. And then they're invested. But when it's a plan that's coming down the pipe and you're skeptical about how that infrastructure is going to work, it's a political challenge, but I'm optimistic. And again, I think that's great for the whole region. I want to take some pressure off the city of Portland. The city of Portland can't build all the housing for the region.
That's a big burden to have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and one other thought on that, Multnomah County has 20% of the population of the state of Oregon, but it has 27% of the jobs. So you would expect, and I think a lot of what we're seeing isn't necessarily a trend that there's a fad or something around living in the city of Portland. It's that people just want to live closer to where they work, so they can take the stress off that commute. So you would expect to see a lot of residential growth closer into these employment centers in the city of Portland anyway. So we're still the opposite of a bedroom community. We're just rebalancing that a little bit. And I think you're going to see a lot of these bedroom communities around the region start to rebalance away from being really residential primarily and start to develop some more commercial office space, light industrial. I think there's just a rebalancing where it used to be all the jobs were sort of in the core and everybody lived out in the suburbs, or sort of a donut model or something. And I think it's becoming more diverse, and that's healthier for the whole system.
Definitely. What do you see in 17 and forward, any kind of concerns in terms of some of the numbers? Is there, like I said, a segment? We talked a little bit about the rapid growth of construction and the shortage. Is there anything else that manufacturing we talked about hasn't had really a recovery? Anything in there that kind of?
Yeah, I think there are some things out on the horizon, but we just don't know what the impact will be. First off, the unemployment rate in the Portland area is at a historic low. We're getting down closer to 4% than 5%. And in fact, the unemployment rate in the Portland area now is the lowest it's been in 22 years.
Wow.
And so that, relatedly, that if a business wants to expand in Portland and the unemployment rate's that low, they're going to really struggle to find workers. It's not just construction. So the only way you can really solve that puzzle in the Portland area is, if you needed to hire tomorrow, you'd have two options. You either have to steal somebody who's already working for another firm, and in order to do that, you're going to have to raise their wages, which is probably why we're finally seeing wage growth in 2016, is we're seeing this competition for skilled workers. But the other way is that you get people to move here, which Portland's been good at for many, many years, is getting people to move here from other parts of the country. But if we don't have the housing supply, that could really choke off industry and employment growth. We're not seeing it yet. But when you get an unemployment rate down around 4% or lower, and we're getting into that in 2017, when you have a labor market that tight, it really does constrain employment growth. So what that might look like, we don't know yet. But I think in 2017, we're going to sort of explore how tight the labor market can get, and we can stay healthy. So
and what are the mechanisms to be able to expand that? But again, you've got to house it, you've got to support it, and
to me, it's housing supply.
Right.
To me, if you want to create jobs in 2017, we can do it, but the constraint isn't business investment, it's not optimism, it's not consumer optimism, it's housing supply. Where would those workers live if you created those jobs? And Portland is maybe struggling with the policy of figuring out where those workers are going to live and what that housing supply looks like.
It's going to look like in the future.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for coming. It was a pleasure as always.
Yeah.
And if people want more information on the economic update from Christian, feel free to go to our site at www.hfore.com, and there'll be a download of the report. right here. Thank you again for coming. It was very informative, and hopefully 17 is as robust as we think it's going to be for 16. And like I said, there's some changes on the horizon, but we'll be interested to see what happens. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
Our entire office specializes in multifamily real estate, making HFO the largest multifamily brokerage in the Pacific Northwest. Your success is our passion. Build your legacy with HFO. Call 503-241-5541 or visit our website at hfore.com for more information.